see you guys in the dark.
Hey everyone. So this happened about a year ago, and it's still pretty freaky. For context, my friend and I are both 22 and female. My friend Anna and I were bored one weekend and decided to go to a popular beach to take some pictures and just mess around. So we took pictures and had a really lovely day. Then on the way back, we were starving, so we decided to stop at a McDonald's in the beach town. This town is really, really famous and nice. All the celebrities live there, and it's beautiful. There's also a super famous restaurant right off the highway on the beach that's known for celebrities and rich people going to. This McDonald's was directly across the street from the restaurant. Since so many famous people go to this restaurant, and it's on a pretty busy road, most of them have drivers that take them, usually in big black Escalades. The drivers would usually hang out in the parking lot of the McDonald's while their bosses ate across the street. Anna and I didn't know this at the time. We just wanted a McFlurry. So we go to the McDonald's, and right when we get out of the car, she starts actually acting weird. She triple checks that the car doors are locked, and grabs her fancy camera to bring inside. I ask her what's up, and she says there is a group of guys, the drivers, standing in front of McDonald's, smoking and staring at us. It was giving her the creeps. I'm a pretty chill and trusting person, so I don't know much of it. It's a busy place in a super nice town. I'm not really worried. We go in, and there's a few other people in there about our age. We get our food and sit at the table to eat. One of the drivers come in and sits a few booths down with his back to the wall, right where he can see us. My back is to him, but Anna gets really creeped out and wants to leave. This guy isn't eating or anything. He's just staring at us. Again, this is a pretty crowded McDonald's in one of the nicest towns in Southern California, so I feel pretty safe. Living in South Central, you get used to the odd creep. Still, Anna was freaked out, so I agreed to go. I just have to run to the bathroom first. It was one of those McDonald's where the counter and main dining room were in one big room, and then there was a sort of hallway off to the side of the counter, with more seating in the bathroom at the end, way in the back at least. There was also a door going outside right next to the bathrooms. The bathroom has only 2 stalls. I just walk into the first one, not really paying attention to whether or not anyone else was in there. So I'm in there, doing my thing, and then I hear the door open, and I hear Anna call my name. At this point, I'm very confused, since she's supposed to be watching our stuff, and I'm like, "Yeah? What is it?" She asks if I'm okay. "Yeah, I'm just peeing," I reply. She was like, "Oh, okay," and just stands there in the doorway. After a second, I hear her leave, and I'm thinking that's very weird. So I walk out of the bathroom, and I see her waiting by the door with all of our stuff in her hands. I ask her what's going on and why she came in the bathroom, and she just looks at me really panicky and is like, "We need to leave right now." At this point, I'm still not afraid. I'm just confused. We rush out to the car, and she starts telling me what happened. Turns out when I walked into the bathroom, the creepy driver followed me in a little while after. I don't remember hearing him come in, but maybe I did and just assumed someone had either been in the stall next to me or was leaving, or had just come to check their makeup or something. I'll be honest, I really wasn't paying any attention. I know for sure I wasn't aware that anyone had entered the stall next to me, because he didn't close the stall door when he came in. She was on her phone, so she didn't see him follow me in. A young guy noticed it and went up to my friend, asking if we knew the driver. Frantic, she told him we did not, and ran to check on me. He was in the stall next to me with the stall door open. It was the large handicap stall, not making a single sound. She came in and didn't see him, so she called my name to make sure I was still alive, and he rushed out of the stall past her. She was in shock and didn't know what to do other than gather our things and prepare to run. When we went to her car, he was sitting in his big black car with tinted windows next to us, still staring. We sped off, and when I got the story, we called the McDonald's to let them know what happened. They really didn't care. and then we called the non-emergency sheriff line to report it as well, which was closed. Thank you, Malibu, for absolutely nothing. Eventually, my mom went full-on mama bear and threatened to blast it all over social media that they didn't take any reporting. Got a hold of someone from corporate. They checked their cameras, and they saw the guy follow me in. A police report was finally made, so hopefully this never happens to anyone else again. Thank God nothing happened, but it was really scary. The guy was sitting in his car, staring at us when we left. Who knows what he was planning on doing? So, guy at the McDonald's bathroom, I hope you get caught next time doing what you were doing. Later on, we ended up getting a letter from corporate, telling us that they are really sorry and that they will make sure that they have better security at their stores. A family friend who used to be a cop told us this isn't all that uncommon. A lot of the time, they just film the girl in the stall, which is obviously creepy, but not violent. In this case, the red flag is that he didn't close his stall door, and I never saw anything, which made us think he was waiting to catch me off guard when I turned to wash my hands. Scary no matter what it was. Always be aware of your surroundings and trust your gut, or in my case, your friend's gut. Back in my high school years, I'd often meet with friends at a local Dunkin' Donuts, which was conveniently near a railway we'd all take to our weed guy's house. My closest friend at the time, Katie, and I usually meet up earlier than anyone else just to hang out, order our extra large drinks and hash browns, and attempt at some "hey, mister" type of shenanigans to score some tall boys from anyone willing to buy us some beer. I'd consider us to be pretty naive and overly nice girls, which never proved to be an issue to either of us, until we were nice to the wrong person. Now, for a little background of my hometown, I grew up in the forgotten borough of New York City, Staten Island. For those who are unaware, there was, and kind of still is, a pretty horrendous opioid epidemic, so seeing zombie-like civilians strolling the streets is fairly common. Because of this, I became pretty good at spotting out someone struggling with heroin and things of the sort. Anyways, on this day, Katie and I met up at Dunkin' and sat at our usual booth. We were in the midst of messing around with our phones and being overly giggly selves when I noticed out of the corner of my eye someone suddenly stop outside of the glass door. Still smiling, I glanced over to see if it was maybe one of our friends, and ended up making eye contact with a basic Staten Island-looking dude. I looked away, unbothered, and carried on. Just another customer anyways. After the guy got his coffee, he sat directly at the table across from our booth. I chose to ignore the fact he sat weirdly close, and resisted eye contact with him, since that already awkwardly happened. But I guess the motion caught Katie's attention as she looked over her shoulder at the man settling in. She looked back at me, made a face that said, okay, and we just giggled and tried to move on. Every now and then, I glance in his direction, mainly because I like to be observant of my surroundings, but also because I keep seeing him scratch at his nose, neck, and face in my peripheral vision, and noticed he was bleeding from various little cuts on his body. This was a dead giveaway he was doing some form of opiate, as they tend to get very itchy and scratch until they break the skin. A few minutes later, the man asked if one of us had a charger he could borrow. I kindly denied, and Katie only had an iPhone charger, while the man clearly had an Android. This slight change was enough for the man to feel invited, and he'd continue to make comments for quite some time. Being that this was about 4 years ago, I don't remember the entire conversation, but I do remember him often asking general questions, like if we live around here, what we do on our off in our free time, and creepy things of the sort. I was pretty vague, yet polite in my responses, but Katie was always a bit more enthusiastic in her words, making it pretty easy for this guy to reciprocate, and basically join our conversation altogether. In Katie's innocent stupidity, the guy basically found out some of the main train stops we'd get off at to hang in those areas. He also found out that we would indulge in the devil's lettuce, which only made this guy feel even more inclined. At some point, he mentioned how his ex-girlfriend got him into some trouble, got him into heroin, which he used to sell, served jail time for, and pretty recently got out. He also mentioned how he'd been in an ice cream truck and a driver ever since his release, and told us that he's always driving around the train stops Katie mentioned earlier. He also repeatedly offered to give us rides around in his truck someday, with free ice cream as the bribe. Again, we were pretty naive and overly nice girls. Katie more so than I. So one thing led to another, and eventually this guy was asking for Katie's social media, which she happily obliged to. She's always been really dedicated to expanding her follower count. Throughout all of this entire exchange, I was mostly just nodding, smiling, laughing here and there, so my remaining silence during the social media exchange went unnoticed. However, once the guy started following Katie on Instagram, he quickly found mine through a tagged picture on her page. I wasn't private at the time, so he immediately started liking and commenting on nearly every one of my pictures. The comments were extremely cringy, consisting of heart eye and water squirt emojis and things like, "Damn, Ma." Finally, after the longest half hour ever, I urged we should really be catching our train. Fortunately, the man wasn't persistent after that, and we were on our way with no problem. After some verbal recap of what just happened, I convinced Katie to block him, and I did the same. We brushed it off with just that. I honestly forgot about the strange interaction until about a week later. I was hanging out with some friends at a park near my high school when Munchies made me crave Ralph's ice cream, which was just up the block. I ventured off with one other friend and also made it to the store before the sound of an ice cream truck approached from behind us. Completely lost in conversation, my attention was only caught by the high-pitched screeching of the truck's brakes and a somewhat familiar voice. Of course, it was him. He shouted out to me with Ralph's only a couple feet in front of us. I ignored him and rushed in my friend. The guy didn't stick around, being that he was blocking the whole lane on a narrow two-way road, but we still called our friend at the park to pick us up in his car. For the next 2 weeks, there were about 4 times this man tried to pick me up in his truck. At this point, making me pretty paranoid I was potentially being stalked. The last time it happened, he was parked directly outside of one of the train stops, almost as if he was waiting for me. He again called out to me, asking why I blocked him, and saying he just wants to be friends. At this point, I had enough, and told him to just leave me alone. My dad's a lieutenant, which was a lie, but slipped out in my defense. I walked away before he could respond, and into the diner I was meeting my friends at that night. I saw his truck drive away in the window, and never had an interaction with the ice cream man again. The sound of the ice cream truck has haunted me ever since that very day. So first, I'm French, so my English really sucks. But I want to share that experience that still gives me chills. I'm working in a carousel in a shopping mall, and this mall is known for being the 3rd biggest mall in Europe, so yeah. Anyway, the first time I worked here, because the carousel is owned by my parents, so when I had free time, I'd go here and work for a few hours, like after school and stuff. I was 13 and was not really used to the Parisian life. I came from a small town in the south, so it was really weird for me to be here. But one day, a guy who was maybe 20 or 30 was sitting on a bench and looking at me. He seemed really nice, and I first thought that he was a parent or something, looking at his children. But he was completely alone and only looking at me. I awkwardly smiled and said hello, thinking he needed some help. He kept smiling, and that's where I started to get scared. But I kept doing my work, looking at another bench to make him understand that I was uncomfortable. And maybe 5 minutes later, he moved, sitting on the bench that I was looking. He was not really smiling and looked kind of disappointed, so I started looking up because people would look at the carousel from there. When I looked down again, like 10 minutes later, the guy was gone. I thought that he left, but he was still looking at me from the first floor with that fucking smile. He stood there for an hour and continued changing, so I would notice him. When I left work, he followed me, so I told my coworker to accompany me until I got home. That was really creepy. He came back in random days, and it has been like 6 months since he has come back. Last year I had a pause and decided to go to the nearest bookshop, as I always did, and I found a book that I liked. Some Tolkien book. I don't even remember which one, but it was a really beautiful book. And the guy, who was maybe 15 or 16, looked at me and made a Tolkien reference. I laughed and just left, 20 minutes later, the same guy was on a bench next to the carousel and looked at me. I smiled, and he came to see me and asked for my number. I said I wouldn't give my number to strangers, but he insisted. I then asked him his number and told him that I'd text him when I'd be done with work. I never texted him. He did come back like 2 days after that, but I didn't see him then. I noticed him following me when I was in the same bookshop. I was moving randomly to see if he was really following me. He was, of course. So I walked towards him and asked him why he kept doing this. He then said that he was in love with me and that I reminded him of his ex-girlfriend and really wanted to know me. I said that I was in a relationship, and he said that that was okay. He could be a third wheel. So I just said that I would text him whenever I would feel like it, and he left. Maybe a month after that, I was going to a famous convention where I was cosplaying as a random maid. I was holding a free hugs cardboard with some random drawings on it. I was with 2 friends. We were having a lot of fun, when out of nowhere someone jumped on me and hugged me. It was this dude. I called the security, and he kept smiling like hell. Said that I was the love of his life, and that he would kill himself. Apparently he asked my coworker why I wasn't here, and she thought he was a friend of mine, and said that I was going to a convention. He came and searched for me all the fucking time. I never saw him after that. Also, he had my number because my coworker gave it to him, and I blocked him, of course. It was during December of 2018, so I had 2 jobs, but in the same shopping mall. A guy, again maybe 20 to 30 years old, with long hair, was sitting on a bench next to the carousel and kept on looking at me. He sat there all day, and I noticed that he was sometimes raising his phone and moved the phone in my direction, as if he was taking pictures or filming me. I was 15, by the way, so he wasn't supposed to take pictures of young people. Plus, the way that he looked at me was really weird, and I even caught him licking his lips while looking at me. I felt really uncomfortable, but kept on working and didn't say anything. The next day I was working on my other job, who was another carousel actually. It was here just for the Christmas holidays, and I didn't see him. But when I left my job and was waiting for my parents to get ready so we could leave, this guy sat next to me, like really, really close, and asked for my number. I said no, and he looked down like disappointed, and asked me, "Where are you working tomorrow?" I replied, "I don't know. Why's that?" "Because I like your body." Stood up and left. I was paralyzed. Really. And the next day I told my coworker, Lionel, another worker by the way, it was a Romanian guy, about what happened to me. I couldn't sleep that night and was really paranoid about everything around me. When I saw the guy and told Lionel to ask him to stop following me like that, he came back with a huge smile, saying, "I'm really not kidding, by the way. It's okay. You two will go on a date." Apparently the guy told my coworker that he was a friend of mine and was messing with me. He said he was really shy and was playing this game, so he would have the confidence to ask me on a date. I was feeling so strange, as if I was going to fall or something. I stopped working that afternoon and told my parents. They told me to stay with them and immediately tell me if they see the guy. When we were leaving, I swear I saw the guy with a hoodie under the rain looking at me and taking pictures of the car. The next day, I was with another coworker, Marie. She's really protective, by the way. She's like a sister to me. And I saw the guy on the bench next to the carousel. When I told her, she ran towards him and yelled at him, stuff that I couldn't hear. But I could see the guy's face, and it was priceless. She came back with a huge smile, and the guy left. Apparently, she said that she knows where he lives, and if she saw him around me for a second, she would blow his brains out. I never saw that guy ever again, thank God. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.